Tony Stark always has such nice suits, but could Tony have had better suits? What comic book suits could have helped Tony in the MCU? The Iron Man suit has gone through a few upgrades from its rough caveman origins, all the way to the nano suit that seemed to be able to do just about anything, including making its own Infinity Gauntlet. But there are some suits from the comics that might have made things easier for him. Let's see how Tony's other suits might have helped save the day in the MCU. Once upon a time, a genius billionaire was kidnapped by a terrorist group that wanted him to build them a weapon. Instead, he built a suit of armor and got some important life advice from another genius, and Iron Man became part of the MCU. Since then, Tony has worked on improving the suit, mostly when it comes to suiting up. In Iron Man 2, Tony introduced the suitcase armor, which still took a few intense moments to come together, while a guy with an arc reactor whips tear apart your Formula 1 car. Watch out, Tony. In Avengers, he installed a self-dressing machine in his drinking room. Though every room is Tony's drinking room, isn't it? MCU Tony didn't go through Demon in a Bottle. But for that method to work, the bad guy has to let you monologue in your own house. Iron Man 3 tried a suit delivery system, while Civil War Tony was experimenting with wearing just the important parts of the suit. All of this led back to that magic triangle and the nano suit of Avengers Infinity War. Now he can suit up with a touch. Need more power? His feet could become a bigger rocket. Need more firepower? Whatever those things are that jump out from behind him are on the task. Anchor Thanos' fist to the ground while hitting him with a haymaker? Hey, no problem. It's a good suit, but the nanosuit doesn't have the best track record. He couldn't stop Cull Obsidian and Amity Maw from kidnapping Doctor Strange, and despite all the tricks, he was only able to get a drop of blood from Thanos. Since blasting out of a cave in 1963 in the page of the comics, Tony Stark has met more than a few high-level threats. The hallmark of Iron Man is that he'll always build to the occasion. So that has meant he's had some really powerful suits. That's certainly true in the Iron Man 2020 storyline. Tony's 2020 isn't going any better than anyone else's. After a complicated series of events, Tony Stark has managed to erase his memory, then have it downloaded into a different body. Always an engineer, this led to Tony start thinking about George Washington's axe. George Washington's axe is a thought experiment. Say you have George Washington's axe, but at some point the handle breaks, so you replace the handle. Later the head is worn out or cracked, so you replace that. But now, is that really George Washington's axe? Another way to think about it is the ship of Theseus that is restored over and over again over time. All the wood is the same shape, but how much of the ship has to be original for that ship to be the actual ship of Theseus? If Tony Stark's consciousness is a copy download into a copy of Tony Stark, isn't this just a clever AI that's convinced he's Tony Stark? So Tony Stark decides he's not Tony Stark, but a convincing Tony Stark copy, and his long-lost brother Arno, more about him later, was convinced enough to take over Stark's company and even his Iron Man identity. Even a Tony Stark that thinks he's a Tony Stark AI is still a force to be reckoned with. The end result is that a Tony Stark that was convinced he was a Tony Stark AI who was hanging out in a hologram world came out with hologram armor. Imagine the Emperor's new clothes, except that the Emperor actually did have new clothes. You just can't see them until you touch them. Actually, wait, don't imagine that. It makes the story so much weirder. The point is, the hologram armor doesn't appear until something hits it. What problem does this solve? The RDJ problem. When you have an actor as dynamic as Robert Downey Jr., you're in a catch-22 in a superhero movie. Superheroes spend a lot of time with a mask over their face, or in Iron Man's case, a helmet. But then you don't get those sweet RDJ expressions. The movies have handled that by showing us the heads-up display with Tony's face. When they show the heads-up display in Terminator movies, who is the text for? Anyways, armor that only becomes visible when he gets hit gives us the full RDJ exposure. And it's an easier suit to wear on set. Like the nanotech suit, the hologram suit seems to respond to Tony's whim, which comes in handy because Tony has a lot of whims. There are no shortage of suits in comic books that respond to people's thoughts, though it doesn't always end well. Spider-Man found a new set of duds on the Beyonders battle world that responded to his thoughts, but then Peter Parker learned why you don't take things home from the gift shop of a place called Battle World. The suit turned out to be a sentient being, a Clintarian symbiote that, once separated, became obsessed with Peter Parker as the villain Venom. Since his introduction, Venom and the symbiotes have really gotten around. At this point, it's easier to list the Marvel characters who haven't bonded with Venom, or at least one of his symbiote fellows. It would seem crazy to do it on purpose, but then Tony is a little crazy. In Superior Iron Man, Tony kind of did, but by making his own liquidy suit. This time, instead of relying on both being a downloaded consciousness in an AI to control the holograms he's been living as, this time he's psionically attached to a liquid metal suit that performed like the T-1000 from Terminator 2. Seriously though, the Terminator isn't really reading those displays, it's the computer that calculated them. Sorry, off track again. The advantage of the suit has over the nano-suit is that it can increase in size. Imagine that a code green goes wrong, and the Hulk is renewing a section of downtown Johannesburg like in Age of Ultron. Instead of having to summon Veronica, the suit can bulk up for the Hulk on the spot. Considering how fast the Hulk goes from 0 to punchy, that time saved can come in handy. There's someone who can tell Tony exactly what it's like to be on the receiving end of a Hulk out, and that's a pair of Asgardian brothers. While they can take a hit, neither of them are big fans. But Asgardians are not unfamiliar with big hitters. They've got their own way to deal with the big hitter threats, and one of those ways is a special material, Uru. Marvel has a lot of super metals. Adamantium is part of what makes Wolverine so unstoppable. Vibranium has helped make Wakanda a technological wonderland. Uru is the magic metal of the dwarves of Nidavellir, and the material that Thor's hammer is made of. Tony's bleeding edge armor was a lot like the nano-suit from Infinity War and Endgame, but when he had to go up against a bunch of Asgardians who were turned bad guy, he went to the dwarves of Nidavellir and gave his bleeding edge suit an Uru upgrade. Naturally, that makes his armor that much stronger. But before Tony gets too confident with that, he should have a conversation with Thor about his sister and what she did to his hammer. There's always stronger, isn't there? But it does have one distinct advantage. The armor was magic. Not in that Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently advanced science will appear as magic kind of way, but in the Asgard is magic kind of way. Could magic have been the edge against Thanos? Well, it kind of was. The Sorcerer Supreme saw the future that defeated Thanos, and the other sorcerers did all the assembling for that final throwdown with Thanos. Magic is handy, advanced technology is handy. There's one threat that is almost certainly on the horizon who knows that these are two great tastes that taste great together, and that's Dr. Doom. He managed to turn a magic and technology combo that's tied up the Fantastic Four for decades. Of course, for Tony Stark to use magic tech armor against a magic tech character like Dr. Doom, he has to survive to get to Doom. So remember that long-lost brother we talked about Tony had? Well, it's a long story. You know the routine. Bred to be a defender of Earth, has to hide out in Iron Lung, later emerges and takes out his brother's business when his brother becomes convinced he's really an AI. You see it all the time. While Tony was in the digital realm thinking he was a robot Tony, and not just Tony, he did what Tonys do, robot or not, and came up with some cool suits. Before the holograph suit, he came up with the Godbuster suit. We've had a lot of suits that respond to Tony's thoughts and are limited only by Tony's imagination, but why stop there? The Godbuster armor was actually built beyond Tony's abilities. In a way, the Godbuster armor exceeds his own ample imagination. No small feat. Tony recognized the problem he's been dealing with since forever. Once he creates something, something will take it and do something bad with it. So he destroyed the armor to prevent anyone else from getting the technology. That is, until his long-lost kind of brother took over his business and used remnants of the armor to reconstruct it. Complete with giant gears as igliots for some reason, Tony could have used some of that edge in the fight against Thanos. But a Titan is a big thing to take down, and the Infinity Stones make that so much harder. Busting gods might not be good enough. Tony needed some help from the Godkiller suit. The Godkiller suit isn't even Tony's design, but that doesn't mean he didn't put a little Tony Stark stink on a new version. The original Godkiller suit was built by the Aspirants to help them take on the Celestials. Celestials are super powerful beings in a universe of super powerful people. In the MCU, Peter Quill's dad is one. So is the Game Master, the being that held the two most powerful Avengers as gladiators. Ne'er-do-wells of the galaxy do their shady business in the floating head of a Celestial. With that kind of power, even the Uru is not going to make a difference. You need something big, not just honeycomb big, but celestial big. Powered by 8 nuclear reactors on top of repulsor technology, it was the best of both celestial tech and that Tony touch that allowed him to take on the Dark Celestials. That should be more than enough to not only match a Mad Titan, but also the hungriest hippo of them all, Galactus. With the Fantastic Four joining the MCU at some undetermined point, it's only a matter of time before the big guy needs to feed. No need to rely on a faithless herald. The Godkiller Mark II armor is up to the task. Unfortunately, in the battle with the Dark Celestials, the armor was destroyed. But you know, Iron Man armor gets destroyed a lot. Like a lot. Whether it's something as simple as giving us more RDJ, or giving RDJ's Iron Man the firepower to beat Thanos, the MCU Tony Stark could have used some help from comic book Tony Stark and those amazing suits. Of course, none of these would have solved the problem of film contracts and actor salaries.
You can't afford me.
Not to mention that the arc for Tony Stark in the MCU was heartfelt and amazing, as the man who wouldn't sacrifice for anyone found a way to sacrifice. Well, we'll always have our RDJ Iron Man memories. You don't want to undo your noble sacrifice just for another dip in the pool, like the Terminator. I mean, the same computer that creates the text is the one who would read it, so why the extra step? Sorry, everybody. Those are some of the Iron Man suits from the comics that might have turned the tide in the MCU. What suit would you like to have seen? Let us know in the comments, and while you're there, why not subscribe to CBR for the latest videos in your inbox? Thanks for watching.